and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is accessing the infinite. Uh, we know through physics that light operates as particle and wave. And what if we were to be able to access both? In the flickering of reality coming in and out of existence, what if we could find a way to be the in-between, or be the unifying, and maybe we are the unifying factor between particle and wave. So it should be an interesting exploration. Can't guarantee where it's going to go, but should be fun to just follow some threads. Good morning, Sue. It's great to be with you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome. Good morning, Shosha. Good morning, Rosalind. So great to have you, everybody here this morning. So we're talking about accessing the infinite. I woke up yesterday with this whole thought process around beingness or reality flickering in and out of existence. And this was an idea that I was first introduced to by Yogananda in the book Autobiography of a Yogi years and years ago. And kind of like like a movie, you know, at 30 frames per second, where these still frames all brought together in sequence, flashing 30 frames a second, gives the illusion of motion and the illusion of continuity. And so what I was thinking was that in the non-existence, in this flicker, that what's available is all the potential frames that exist, and that we could be jumping from one frame to another in that nothingness, so that we could actually bring forward any potential at all from that nothingness. It's kind of the particle wave thing, where we, in our individuated expression as humans, are kind of likened to the particle, but our greater consciousness, our higher self, or our soul self is still, or our spirit is part of this grander field of consciousness, which we could consider the wave. And so the unifier of particle and wave, I don't know. I have no answers for any of this, by the way. But I want to explore it with you, because this notion of life flickering in and out of being is something that allows us access maybe to all these potentials, and it explains things like remote viewing, or people that are able to manifest something out of the air, or past lives even, or so many other inexplicable kinds of things that occur if we're able to reach into this vacuum, this void, pregnant void, according to Deepak Chopra. Then we can manifest things, and it also explains something like shape shifting, for example. If we could actually pull these different expressions from the ether. So Sue says, in Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda compares his life to a movie where every moment or experience is like a single frame in a bigger film. This idea points out that the physical world is temporary and not as real as it seems. Instead, he suggests that the true lasting reality is pure consciousness beyond what we can see and touch. Thank you so much for that, Sue. So that particle and wave, that the flickering into existence is the particle, the flickering out of existence is the wave, perhaps. And Rosalind says, so if I put my walking shoes closer to the recliner, I'll have a greater potential to go outside. I don't know how that fits in, Rosalind, but I think that that's really, really true. That if you make the opportunity accessible, then there's more likelihood of being able to utilize that opportunity. Very funny. I'm going to try that with my walking shoes next to the recliner. Anyway, particle and wave, I guess that's maybe what you're talking about, where we want to motivate intention. We can do that by strategically creating the circumstance or the opportunity for a circumstance. So let's take a look at this idea. What I was thinking, recently I had read a chapter from Neville Goddard about manifesting. And the thing that he says is that what creates our reality is assumptions, and we can adopt new assumptions. And when we do, it's not the world that changes, it's what's visible to us through the assumptions that we make. So I'm gonna read it again, just so you know what I'm talking about. So this is the principle of least action. And this idea of the flickering in and out of reality aligns with this notion of least action. At least for me, it makes sense. So you can tell me if it makes sense to you too. The principle of least action governs everything in physics, from the path of a planet to the path of a pulse of light. Least action is the minimum of energy multiplied by the minimum of time. So minimum of energy, minimum of time, this flickering in and out, right? They couldn't get more minimal than that, I'm imagining. So therefore, in moving from your present state to the state desired, you must use the minimum of energy and take the shortest possible time. Your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. So to make the journey, you must employ the psychological equivalent of least action, and the psychological equivalent is mere assumption. The day you fully realize the power of assumption, you discover that it works in complete conformity with this principle. It works by means of attention minus effort. Thus, with least action through an assumption, you hurry without haste and reach your goal without effort. Because creation is finished, what you desire already exists. It is excluded from view because you can see only the contents of your own consciousness. So if we look at this assumption, what our main assumption, what occurred to me is that our main assumption is continuity. That we have this assumption that things happen in a linear way. And as a result of that assumption, we disallow for radical shift. And what Goddard is talking about is creating new assumptions that generate that shift in the least amount of energy and the least amount of time. So Sue says, particle and wave asks us to consider that our existence might not be fully understood or confined to a singular nature, but rather might include aspects that are both solid and fluid. Beautiful, Sue. Thank you so much for sharing that. So this is the conversation about holding paradox that we keep coming back to. Particle and wave, solid and fluid. In other words, that we are not of fixed nature. So we were attempting to talk about transition and change yesterday, and what we're talking about today kind of is instantaneous manifestation of potentials. So Sue says things might shift radically if we allow the notion that reality is not linear. Exactly. Thank you, Sue. It's awesome. I so appreciate your paraphrasing. It's very, very helpful, or your reiteration. Thank you. So let's look at these assumptions. It occurred to me that the primary assumption is continuity that we have, and linearity. Like we believe that time is linear, at least in our culture. And there's a lot to be said for the notion, and I think there are physics theories that discuss this as well, and maybe even proofs, I don't know, but that everything exists all at once. And that's something that Neville Goddard is saying too, is that creation's done. And what if it's all just frames of a movie? What if what strings it together in a seemingly linear fashion is our consciousness? So this sent me down a rabbit hole yesterday, because years ago I took a workshop in something called matrix energetics. I've since tried to do a deep dive into it to see where it is these days. I'm talking 2009, 2000. I think that Richard Bartlett wrote his first book in 2007 called Matrix Energetics. And then the other one was The Physics of Miracles, I think. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's a coherent path to follow from then to now, but I remember being quite taken by this because it was an exploration of all these possibilities, like bizarro possibilities, but a lot of what was showing up for people was instantaneous healing, which is also something that's very much explained by this switching in and out of being, right? This flickering in and out of being from existence to potentiality, existence to potentiality. And what if we could source ourselves in a way that we can actually access that? And I think that that's the same thing that's happening when with Joe Dispenza going into the nothing and the blackness and the everything, the nothing that is the everything, this field of pure potentiality. And I'm wondering what happens when we allow ourselves to be free of the presumption of continuity. And if it's possible to maintain sanity and do that, because what's sanity? Sanity is this continuity, right? In so many ways. I mean, it's defined by that continuity, the consensus reality. And I'm not really sure how all this, how the self, and I'm not sure of any of it. Let's not kid anybody. But imagine if we could, I guess what I'm not sure of the collective impact. I mean, we have this collective field of consciousness that is our consensus reality. And one of the foundational assumptions is continuity, right? And if we were to free ourselves of that, I think it would be very easily to be perceived as nuts, right? Because things are not linear, which brings up the notion that the greatest sages and prophets perhaps would be perceived as nuts too. So Sue says, if we could tap into a higher level of creation and imagine and feel a desired outcome as if it were already true, we can transcend the limitations of time, space, and the traditional idea of cause and effect. And so Sue is posing that as a question. And I think that that's what we're told about manifesting. That's what Neville Goddard is talking about. And you said something so key in your question, Sue, which was imagine and feel a desired outcome as if it were already true. So Neville Goddard goes on to actually speak that. Let me see if I can find the fuller conversation or the fuller quote from him. Okay, so what he says is when we make these new assumptions, it's the function of an assumption to call back the excluded view and restore full vision. It is not the world, but your assumptions that change. I'm going to skip through. It says, watch your assumptions with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Assumptions have the power of objective realization. Every event in the visible world is the result of an assumption or idea in the unseen world. The present moment is all important, for it is only in the present moment that our assumptions can be controlled. The future must become the present in your mind if you would wisely operate the law of assumption. The future becomes the present when you imagine that you already are what you will be when the assumption is fulfilled. But still, be still, least action, and know that you are that which you desire to be. The end of longing should be being. And this is with the emotion, with the experience of the thing that we are wanting to become. So it's being and becoming, bringing the becoming into the present moment, into being. So Sue says, please feel free to comment and like Mira's show. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just very engaged in this inquiry. I was talking to AI about it yesterday, and AI was talking about becoming particle and wave concurrently. Like and if our consciousness is creating it all, or if we are essentially consciousness, then it's all one thing, and we can potentially access any aspect of it. And the thing that is limiting us is our attachment to continuity. So Shosha says, this also helps me with the discussion of the difference between change and transitions. I think, thank you, Shosha. I think maybe the transformation factor, or the discussion of change and transitions is time bound. And our experience of time is that it's linear, and that we believe that there's a past and a future. But we've spoken about this before, where really, truly, there is no past or future. There's only this moment, because when we talk about the past, where is it? It's right here. When we talk about the future, where is it? It's right here. And we're constructing a story about the past, or we're constructing a story about the future. But where is that construct existing? Right here, right now. And speaking of this linearity of time, I'm not the first to discover it, but what I've seen validated over and over in sessions with clients is that we truly can rewrite the past. And we can look at history, we can notice that we are rewriting history all the time. When we make new discoveries, we make new stories about the past. When we have different cultural and social atmospheres, we bring different stories to the fore around the past, and we shift the perception of events in the past. So the in its own weird way, the past and the future are both emergent in this moment. So I'm just so fascinated by this conversation when we think about spontaneous healing and this flickering in and out of existence, being able to pull in any possibility. It makes for an understanding of spontaneous healing, for example, right? Because what happens is that person accesses potentially, I mean, it's not that I have a full understanding of the mechanics of this, or this is an exploration, not a treatise, but perhaps what that person is tapping into is the dimension of the expression of their being where they were never sick, like where their body is just whole. And maybe it's even going beyond their body to create conditions, like going beyond the limitations and the constraints of what we believe our physical manifestation, our physical form to be. And what we believe the limits to be. So if we go back to Neville Goddard's assumptions, we have all kinds of assumptions that we just take as the foundation of reality. Like one of the things is you can't argue with gravity. But supposedly there are people who have levitated through history, or people who have been able to fly. And what is it that would have allowed them to do that beyond creating new assumptions or releasing themselves from other assumptions? So this is something I'm just intrigued to play with, to look at, well, what does it take to move beyond those assumptions, to be opening to the greater reality that's there. It's the same thing that we talk about all the time, about freeing ourselves from the static notion of who we are and what our beliefs are, and what our programming is, to be releasing that, to then expose the other potentials that we are being blinded from, that are obscured by those constraints. So I understand that this is kind of an this is definitely an esoteric conversation, but this is the kind of stuff that really lights me up, to see what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of being? What are we? What are we? And what are we doing here? And so I don't anticipate finding answers, at least not closed door answers, because we can say, well, we're consciousness, but then what is consciousness? What is life? What is all of that? And to be exploring the edges of that and the potential of that just is something I find very invigorating. And I love that you're willing to go on this journey with me periodically. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's my pleasure, my privilege and pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to share these morning musings on what it is to be human, and to be in this discovery together. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time. So